Tom was a respected geology expert, and I was just a rural woman with a high school education. We were married for 40 years, and for 35 of them, Tom was dissatisfied with our marriage. After his sudden death, I finally gained control of the remote and the freedom of time that belonged only to me. Every day, I watched the soap operas Tom used to call meaningless. I ate at many street stalls he once said served nothing but trash. On my 65th birthday, I ordered myself a durian mille crepe cake and celebrated the first birthday that truly belonged to me. Just as I was about to make a wish, my daughter, who hadn't called in ages, rang me up. "Mom, today is Dad's 67th heavenly birthday. Don't forget to fry him some of those little yellow croakers he liked." "Oh, and Aunt Autumn and I already went to the cemetery, so you don't need to go. Dad wouldn't be happy down there if you did." After the call ended, I sat in the deathly quiet house, staring blankly for a long time. Finally, I lit the candle and made the only wish of my entire life. Solemnly and sincerely, if I could live again, I would never want to have anything to do with Tom. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Tom first came to our village. Chapter 1. Jennifer? Jennifer! Someone patted me twice on the back, and I jerked my head up. "Girl, what are you daydreaming about? Hurry up and pick one to take home." I turned around and saw Aunt Ma's dark face and that row of strikingly white teeth. In front of me stood the low houses and the familiar faces gathered in small groups, all from my memories. I knew clearly then, my wish had come true. I had really gone back to the day when Tom and his group of university students first arrived in our village. After the college entrance exams were reinstated, many of the educated youth were admitted to universities and returned to their original paths in life. Because of the unique geological structure of our area, Tom, who studied geological exploration, came with his classmates under the university's arrangement to conduct field research in our village. However, the houses prepared for them had just been destroyed by a mudslide. So, the village chief asked those whose homes hadn't been damaged to vacate a room for the students to stay in. There were nearly 20 people in Tom's group, and only 2 were girls. In my past life, I had arrived late because I was busy tidying up the house. By the time I got there, only a few were left to choose from. So I brought home the one who looked the most honest and well-behaved, Tom. And that was how my ill-fated connection with him began, seeing that the 2 girls had already been claimed by other aunts from the village. I hurried over and took the arm of Aunt Wong, who lived next door to me. "Auntie, my dad's still out buying goods and won't be back soon. How about letting the sister come stay with me?" Aunt Wong blinked, but didn't object. "All right. Ask her if she's willing to go with you." The girl Aunt Wong had chosen was named Jasmine. Unlike the other girl, whom I had little impression of, Jasmine had been Tom's colleague for decades in my previous life. When rumors about Autumn and Tom spread like wildfire, she had spoken up for me and defended me, straightforward by nature. Jasmine didn't turn me down. After a brief introduction, she picked up her luggage and followed me home. Though decades had passed, I had walked this road home countless times in my dreams. The joy and panic of living it all again were tightly buried in my heart. After settling Jasmine into the tidy guest room, I sat in the shabby little shop, lost in old memories. "Hello, could I have a bar of soap, please?" That familiar voice from memory echoed in my ears. I froze and slowly looked up, meeting the eyes of Tom, decades younger. Seeing me silent for a long moment, he waved a hand in front of my face. "Hello?" The scent of soap mingled with the dampness in the air. I snapped back to reality, grabbed a bar of soap from the counter, and handed it to him. "What's your name? Have we met before?" Seeing the confusion and curiosity in Tom's eyes, I replied coldly, "There are plenty of people who look like me. My name has nothing to do with you." Tom gave an awkward little smile, then turned to leave, glancing back at me 3 times as he went. From the moment I heard that voice, my heart had been beating erratically, afraid that Tom, like me, had also been reborn. But then I remembered what he'd said the day before his sudden death. "Jennifer, the biggest regret of my life is marrying you. You ruined what I could have had with Autumn." And at that thought, I felt that if he had retained his past life memories, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad thing. Because of a heavy rainstorm, the road connecting our village to the outside world was destroyed. It wasn't until the 3rd night that my father returned home, hauling the new stock he had purchased. After greeting Jasmine, he called me into his room. I heard some of the university students who came this time are quite good looking. He said, you should seize the opportunity, try to settle something before they leave. My mother had passed away early after rejecting 7 or 8 women who wanted to become my stepmother. My father raised me on his own. Maybe he always thought I hadn't grown up yet. Or maybe he just couldn't bear to see me marry off and leave home too soon. When all the girls my age in the village had already married and had children, my father finally began to worry about my marriage. The marriage law had just come into effect earlier that year, and I had only turned 22 months ago. In the meantime, my father had met with every matchmaker within 10 miles, but he was never satisfied with any of the men they introduced. In my previous life, because Tom stayed in our house. Father came back from his trip to find Tom helping me clean the yard. He learned that Tom was educated and hardworking. And upon hearing that Tom had an urban household registration and an older brother serving in the army, Father grew very interested and started deliberately creating chances for Tom and me to be alone together. Chapter 2. Before Tom met me, he had never been in love. During his stay in our village, he once fell ill, and I was the one who took care of him the whole time. Not long after his university team returned to the city, Tom brought his parents to our home to propose. For the first few years of marriage, things between us were genuinely good. He knew how to make me laugh, and every day after work, he would bring me small gifts, little trinkets that warmed my heart. When our daughter was born, he was overjoyed, calling me the heroine of the Sioux family, saying that his parents had always wanted a girl. But everything changed after one particular geological expedition. That mission lasted half a year. When Tom returned, thinner, quieter, he often shut himself in his study. He stopped sharing stories from the field like he used to. And when our eyes met, there was something in his gaze that I couldn't understand, something heavy and distant. He ate less and less, worried about his health. I planted vegetables and fruit trees all over our once flower-filled courtyard. I even raised 2 chickens in the corner. And since I couldn't find any fertilizer for sale, I started composting our kitchen waste to enrich the soil. That one act caused an uproar in the neighborhood. It was our first argument as a couple. At the time, I didn't understand what I had done wrong. I had only been trying to take care of him, until the day I met Autumn in person. After she was transferred to Tom's unit, she came to our house once. When she knocked, I was in the courtyard spreading compost on the vegetable patch. Our 4-year-old daughter went to open the door, and didn't say a word afterward. When I realized something was off and stepped outside, I saw them, Tom and Autumn, standing close together, speaking softly. Even now, decades later, I can still see that moment clearly. Autumn wore a white dress that day, her hair in 2 neat braids, the breeze carrying her perfume through the yard, diluting the earthy smell of fertilizer. I swallowed my discomfort and was about to invite her in. But Tom pinched his nose, pulled Autumn back 2 steps, and snapped. Don't you realize how awful you smell? You want to invite people in like this? Aren't you ashamed? Our daughter covered her nose too, then shyly inched closer to Autumn and said, Mommy stinks. Auntie smells nice. That was the first time I understood what humiliation truly felt like. And in that moment, I finally realized why Tom had been so angry about the compost. He thought I'd embarrassed him, made him lose face in front of his colleagues. He regretted marrying me, a crude rural woman who didn't fit into his world. But everything I did, every seed I planted, had been for his health. And in the end, all it earned me was disgust. Dad, I said softly, I heard the city's food factory is hiring. I want to give it a try. I'm not in a hurry to get married. Our family was one of the better off ones in the village, thanks to my father's connections and savings. He had opened the first, and only, grocery shop around. We never had to worry about food or money. Unlike other parents who sent their children out to earn early, my father only wanted me to marry well, to find someone who would treat me kindly, so I'd never have to suffer as he had. But how could he understand that the pain inside the heart is far harder to bear than hunger or hardship? As expected, when he heard I wanted to work, he immediately refused. There's no need for you to earn money, he said. You're not young anymore. And if you keep waiting, people will talk. In my previous life, on his way to visit me after I married Tom. My father died in an accident. At that time, I had just discovered Tom's affair with Autumn. Then, my father's sudden death shattered what little strength I had left. I lost the baby I was carrying, and the damage left me unable to conceive again. Now, reborn and standing before him again, seeing the warmth and concern in his eyes, my heart ached with the weight of time regained. I took a step forward and buried myself in his arms. "Dad," I whispered. "Life is long. I don't want to marry too early. I want to see how far I can go on my own." Chapter 3. Father eventually agreed to let me go out and see the world. In my previous life, I hadn't understood much. I thought that finishing high school already made me well educated. But after spending a lifetime as a housewife, I finally realized that only when your own skills are strong can you truly take control of your life. No matter what I wanted to do in the future, I needed to keep studying. It was true that I wanted to work at the food factory, but what I didn't tell Father was that once I got settled, I planned to enroll in night school. Jasmine's older sister worked at the factory, and through her, I learned about the factory's usual hiring requirements. Time slipped by quickly. Before I knew it, nearly 20 days had passed since I came back. That afternoon, Jasmine came running home in a hurry. Seeing how flustered she was, I quickly asked what had happened. "One of our classmates suddenly got a fever," she said. "I brought some medicine with me, maybe it'll help." Before she even finished her sentence, Jasmine grabbed a small bag and rushed out again. Something in my memory stirred. I glanced at the wall calendar, and sure enough, it was the same day Tom had been bitten by a rat in my previous life. Back then, Father had been trying to push me toward Tom, and I'd already begun to feel a faint affection for him. When I noticed something wrong with him that morning, Father and I had rushed him to the hospital. But this time, Tom was staying at Granny Zhang's house, a frail old woman living with her unmarried, disabled son. They were rough, careless people. It was no wonder they didn't notice Tom's condition in time. I shook my head, dismissing the thought, and went back to my chores. When Jasmine returned later, she told me what had happened. "Good thing the villagers knew what to do," she said. "They realized Sue was bitten by a rat. The doctor said if they'd come any later, it might have been too late." I didn't hate Tom so much that I wanted him dead, so I just listened quietly, letting Jasmine tell the whole story. The next day was the recruitment day for the food factory. I left for the city early in the morning after finishing the written test. I strolled around for a while before heading back. When I got off the bus, I was surprised to see Tom waiting by the station, his face pale, his whole body weak. I only glanced at him once, then turned to leave, but his words froze me in place. "Jen, you came back early, didn't you? You knew this was going to happen. Why didn't you warn me? Do you have any idea how close I was to dying yesterday?" I turned around and gave him a puzzled look. "Are you talking to me? Who's Jen?" Before he met Autumn, Tom always called me Jen. After he fell for her, he never did again. He'd call me by my full name, or just say hey to get my attention before speaking coldly. Now, his face was full of disbelief. He didn't believe my denial, but couldn't explain why. So he just stood there, watching me walk away. After that day, I avoided contact with all the university students except Jasmine. When the factory posted the written exam results, I went to the city again. Seeing my name on the list, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The interviews were scheduled for 2 days later. When I returned home, I brought some pastries from the city to thank Jasmine and her sister for their help. Jasmine blushed as she accepted them. "Jennifer, you didn't have to. Tomorrow I'll call my sister and ask her what you should prepare for the interview." That was exactly what I'd been hoping for, but I hadn't expected Tom to overhear her phone call. The day of the interview, he stopped me halfway to the bus station, blocking my way. "Jennifer," he said, his tone sharp with frustration, "why are you pretending not to know me? It wasn't like this before. You've never worked a day in your life. You can't handle this kind of hardship." Chapter 4. Tom's voice rose sharply, drawing the attention of many passengers on the bus. Sensing all the curious eyes turning toward me, I frowned and shoved him away. "Are you out of your mind?" Why do you always say such nonsense? If you keep pestering me, I'll call the police and report you for harassment. In this era, harassment was considered a serious crime, even if Tom hadn't actually done anything excessive. With my testimony and so many witnesses around, things wouldn't end well for him. Hearing my words, those who had thought Tom and I were close all looked shocked. Seeing that, Tom could only suppress his anger. He watched me board the bus, then watched it drive away. Perhaps someone had told my father what had happened that morning. When I got home, my father told me that he had gone to speak with Tom's supervising teacher. Don't be afraid, girl. As long as I'm here, no one will dare bully you. Actually, I wasn't afraid at all, but my father's words still warmed my heart. Maybe this time, heaven gave me a small bonus for being reborn. I passed the interview smoothly and completed the hiring process. The food factory had staff dormitories, but new employees weren't eligible yet. Luckily, with the help of Jasmine's older sister, I managed to rent a small place near the factory. The rent was cheap, and even after paying it, I still had plenty left from my monthly salary. Once everything was settled, I called my father and gave him my address in the city. Then, without wasting a second, I went to enroll in night school. The moment I signed my name on the admission form, I felt an immense sense of relief, as if the invisible string that had bound me since my rebirth had finally snapped. I was walking a completely different path from my past life. On my first day off, I carried a bottle of liquor I'd bought for my father and went home. When he saw how much more energetic and confident I'd become, he was so pleased that he drank a few extra cups. After washing the dishes and stepping into the courtyard, I saw him looking up at the moonlight, murmuring softly, "Do you see her? Our daughter has grown up. Don't worry, so long as I'm alive, I'll never let her suffer any wrongs." Leaning against the doorway, Jasmine whispered to me, "Your dad is the most devoted man I've ever seen. I hope someday I'll find someone who loves me like that." I smiled but said nothing. Once upon a time, I had wished for the same thing. That's why, when Tom and I had confirmed our feelings for each other, I was so happy, and when I later learned he had fallen for someone else, I couldn't believe it. Even though my father's deep devotion to my mother had brought him endless gossip and judgment. Growing up in that kind of environment, I never imagined that my own marriage would fall apart so soon after it began. In my previous life, I was trapped in that marriage for a lifetime. Now that I had been given another chance, I swore I'd never fall into the same trap again. I thought once Tom's internship ended, we would never cross paths again. But one night, after finishing my class at night school, I unexpectedly ran into Tom at the school gate. The moment he saw me, he strode straight toward me. "You actually came to class again, Jennifer. What are you trying to do?" Because I had stayed behind to ask the teacher a few questions. Most of the students had already left. Seeing that no one was around, Tom dropped all pretense. "Admit it, you've been reborn too, haven't you?" I couldn't understand why Tom, who had regretted marrying me before his death, was now obsessed with whether or not I had also been reborn. But since I already had a stable job and a clear direction in life, I decided to end things cleanly once and for all. "So what if I was?" I said calmly. "In the last life, you regretted marrying me, and I regretted marrying you. Since we both have another chance, you should go chase your so-called unfinished dreams instead of trying again and again to prove your existence through me." Tom froze for a long moment before finally speaking. "How can you say that? What right do you have to regret it?" Chapter 5. After we married, I never let you work a single day. I fed you, clothed you, supported you. You've never suffered a day. You, a country girl who didn't even finish university, was called Shermu by my students, and professor's wife by people who knew us. All the fame and fortune you enjoyed came because of me. What right do you have to regret marrying me?" Tom was so angry his face was flushed and his neck strained, but I only felt amused listening to his accusation. As the marriage went on, the gulf between Tom and me only widened. He rarely came home. He was either out leading field surveys or holed up in the school dormitory. Everyone praised him as a model of dedication, but nobody knew how hard life was for me, raising our child alone and taking care of his parents while he was away. From the time you were 40, half my salary each month went into our household. Your parents needed money for medicine. Our daughter needed money for school. And with daily living expenses, I pinched and scrimped every month. I couldn't even save up to buy myself a new dress in a whole year. In my previous life, the day after the Tom Autumn scandal broke, my father had an accident and passed away. On top of that, I miscarried and my health was ruined. Tom's parents forced him to kneel at my bedside and promised that I would be his only wife in this life. Maybe the gossip made Tom's life at the school difficult. Maybe a remnant of conscience pricked him. Tom agreed. He really did stop mentioning Autumn's name, to avoid suspicion. Autumn even transferred to another workplace. But after Autumn's husband died, Tom secretly re-established contact with her. He gave half his salary to Autumn and her child. His free time outside work was spent with that mother and child. My daughter learned, at 4 years old, that her parents didn't get along. When she was 17, she saw with her own eyes the father who said he didn't have time for her birthday, sitting and eating with a boy younger than her. When discovered, Tom didn't try to hide it. He righteously claimed he was only helping Autumn and her child out of hardship, accused me of being petty and poisoning our daughter's mind, and at the same time dumped the care of his parents onto me, calling it my duty as a daughter-in-law. If it weren't for Tom's parents treating me well, I wouldn't have been able to stand by and watch the two old people, who had already lost their eldest son, be abandoned by their younger son. Maybe I would have left long ago with my daughter. The first year Tom gave half his salary to Autumn. Life was brutal for the four of us. Tom's eldest brother died on a mission while covering for a comrade. His wife remarried with half the death benefit and took the child with her. The other half of the death benefit was taken from Tom's father by Tom, on the pretext of needing it for research. At our poorest, for a whole week we lived on thin porridge with almost no rice and coarse steamed buns. Meanwhile, Tom and Autumn were seen eating every meal at the state restaurant. At New Year's, Tom, who hadn't come home for a long time, found no festive atmosphere at all in our house. I was still wearing clothes washed thin and pale, in front of our child and his parents. He publicly scolded me for being incapable of keeping a household. Tom's father grabbed the belt and began to beat him. Our daughter cried, telling how hard that year had been for us. Tom's mother raged at Tom. I showed no expression, and my eyes met Tom's without flinching. For the first time, I saw guilt in Tom's eyes. Perhaps it was a longing for a peaceful married life, or perhaps my father's influence after Tom admitted his mistake. I softened, and so I spent my life with him. I don't know when it happened, but the daughter who once resented Autumn began to side with Tom. I only remember how shattered I felt the first time my daughter accused me of bringing shame on both her and Tom. Tom despised me for not being presentable, for embarrassing him. My own daughter, whom I raised by myself, grew resentful, saying I only worried about the little patch of land around our home, unlike her Aunt Autumn, who attracted attention wherever she went and was the model for her life. A husband who disliked me, a daughter who despised me, angry and sickened. I endured, disgusted by both myself and them. I stubbornly held on and never divorced Tom, refusing to let him and Autumn walk openly together, even to the end. Chapter 6. After briefly revisiting the blurry memories of my muddled past life, I looked straight at Tom, who was still frozen in place, my gaze cold as ice. Being your family's maid, despised and ordered around my whole life, what makes you think I should be grateful for such a pathetic existence? Without waiting for his reaction, I turned around and walked away, ignoring whatever he said after that. From then on, my days fell into a strict routine. After all, decades had passed since I was in high school, and I had forgotten nearly everything I'd learned. But I wasn't about to give up. I believed in myself. Outside of work hours, I didn't waste a single minute if I wasn't reading. I was solving practice problems. I had no intention of staying at the food factory forever. I wanted to study while working, earn enough money, and bring my father to live in the city. During that time, I also took some spare moments to research the local prices and possible small business locations. Not far from the factory, there was a free market where vendors could set up stalls. My father could easily continue selling goods there. Life in the village wasn't bad. But in my previous life, my father had never truly enjoyed a single day of comfort before he died. Now that I had another chance, I wouldn't miss any opportunity to change his life. I wanted him to see the world beyond our village. After learning that it was best to obtain a personal business license before setting up a stall, I went home on one of my days off. At that time, The government neither supported nor opposed private businesses. To be safe, I wanted to see if my father could find someone to help him with the paperwork. When I told him my plan, he was silent for a long time, afraid that he might refuse to move to the city. I played my trump card. Dad, I'm preparing for next year's college entrance exam. I go to night school every day now, but classes end pretty late. A while ago, I even got cornered by a thug. Before I could finish, my father slammed his hand on the table. Then we're going. We must go. My daughter's already working hard to build a better life. How could I be the one to hold her back? Tomorrow, I'll go with you to the city. We'll get that license sorted out as soon as possible. My father had once served in the army. Even after retiring, he kept in touch with many comrades working in different fields. Hearing his firm tone, I knew half the battle was already won. He had agreed to move. When I first came to the city, money was tight, so the room I rented was only big enough for myself. But now, with my father's decision made, I hurried to ask around for a larger place so he could move in as soon as his license was approved. The new place I found was near Jasmine's home. While I was negotiating with the landlord, she happened to spot me. "Jennifer, are you moving here?" she asked. When I nodded, Jasmine beamed. "That's wonderful. Now I can visit you all the time. You don't know how many juicy stories I've been saving up. I've had no one to tell them to." People in this era were still pretty reserved, and most preferred to keep things to themselves. Jasmine, 2 years older than me, used to share all sorts of funny school stories when she lived at my house. She had told me her sister hated gossip and that she didn't really have anyone else to talk to. Without Tom in my life, everything seemed to fall neatly into place. My father's business license came through, and in the 5th month since my return to this time, he moved into the city with me. He didn't close the small village shop. He left it to someone trustworthy to watch over. He had his own plans too. Once the license was settled, he wanted to rent a small storefront. My father had been honorably discharged due to an injury, and he'd received a compensation payment from the government back then. He'd made that money work for him over the years, turning it into more, so he had some confidence about starting a shop in the city. But after asking around about rental prices and business conditions, he began to hesitate. That was when I handed him all the money I'd saved and told him my plan. "Dad, don't worry about the money. I'm going to sell my job contract. That way, we'll have enough funds to start the shop, and I'll have more time to help you." Chapter 7. My father had excellent cooking skills, and with the experience I carried from my previous life, I suggested he start small, with a snack shop. Thanks to some cooking techniques that were decades ahead of their time, and the affordable prices we set, the little shop quickly drew attention from the locals. Worried that helping at the shop might interfere with my studies, my father soon hired an assistant once business stabilized, telling me to focus entirely on my review. During that period, Jasmine shared plenty of gossip with me, and some of it was about Tom. "Do you remember the guy who got bitten by a rat before?" she asked one evening. I nodded. "Well," Jasmine continued, "he must have lost his mind. Not long ago, he insisted on joining a geological survey team in the neighboring province, one that had only been formed for less than 2 months. But after less than a month there, he started making a fuss about wanting to come back. The teacher who recommended him just shook his head when he heard about it. The province she mentioned was none other than Autumn's hometown. So, it seemed Tom had finally made up his mind to go meet Autumn ahead of time. But I couldn't figure out why he'd suddenly want to come back so soon. A few days later, Jasmine brought me more gossip, and with the memories of my past life, I pieced everything together. The reason Tom couldn't stay there for long was because he'd made a complete fool of himself. In my previous life, when Tom and Autumn met, he already had some status and recognition. Autumn, eager to improve her life, ignored the fact that Tom was married and approached him first. But in this life, Tom was just a freshly graduated college student, no power, no connections. When he found Autumn, she happened to be walking with another man. Tom didn't take that man seriously. He thought that as soon as Autumn saw him, she would be gentle and affectionate toward him. Just like before, he had no idea that the man was Autumn's childhood sweetheart. Tom's sudden appearance had ruined their rare date together. When Tom tried to convince Autumn to go with him, she not only refused but also lashed out at him together with that man. Tom thought she just didn't recognize him yet, hadn't seen the charm he'd shown at work in his past life. So, after Autumn officially joined the exploration team, Tom tried again to win her over. This time, Autumn reported him to the team leaders. The new geological team was small, everyone knew everyone else. Naturally, they looked down on this arrogant outsider. Tom was ostracized until he couldn't take it anymore. And finally, he begged his professor to transfer him back. Around that time, several heavy snowfalls hit the city, and the roads were slick with ice. I worried that my father might slip while coming to pick me up. So I told him I'd walk home with a classmate who lived nearby and that he didn't need to come. That evening, after class ended, I overheard people murmuring that someone was standing outside the school gates, nearly frozen solid, refusing to leave, afraid it might be my stubborn father. I quickened my pace toward the entrance, but when I peered through the small crowd and saw a man whose shoulders were dusted white with snow, I breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't my father. I turned to head home, but then I heard someone calling my name. When I turned around, that ice statue was staggering toward me. When he was barely 2 meters away, I finally recognized who it was. Tom. Snow had piled thickly on his shoulders, and even his eyebrows and eyelashes were crusted with ice. "What do you want this time?" I asked, my tone frosty. Hearing how cold my voice was, Tom rubbed his face hard, trying to shake off the numbness. "Jen, let's talk," he said, his voice rough. In this freezing weather, who would want to stand outside chatting with him? Without even glancing at him again, I turned and started walking home. Seeing this, Tom hurried forward, trying to grab my hand, but the icy ground betrayed him. His feet slipped, and he fell hard, sliding several meters before coming to a stop. A few bystanders helped him up. Tom could barely stand, clutching his waist and trembling as he said, "Jennifer, aren't you going to help me up?" When he didn't hear a reply, he looked up, but I was already gone, nowhere in sight. The next evening, night school was closed, so I went to help out at my father's snack shop. Jasmine came by after work, bubbling with fresh gossip. "You know that classmate who got bitten by a rat?" she began, eyes wide. "He's got a new story now. He actually broke his tailbone. He's in the hospital." I remembered hearing a heavy thud the night before and had guessed Tom must have fallen, but I hadn't expected it to be that bad. "I swear, that guy Tom must have something weird hanging over him," Jasmine continued. "Nobody's that unlucky. Either he's offended something supernatural, or he's just cursed. I think I'll stay far away from him from now on." Her words caught my attention. In my previous life, though Tom's love life was disgraceful, his professional abilities were exceptional. Both his colleagues and students respected him deeply. In this life, even though he was still young, if he could have stayed grounded and worked hard as before, he would have surely achieved the same level of success. But now, ever since Tom got bitten by that rat, Jasmine said, lowering her voice, he's been acting completely different. He interrupts teachers during field work, always showing off. He's nothing like the humble person he used to be. And after all that fuss about joining another team, now he's using connections to get himself transferred back. A lot of people can't stand him anymore. Chapter 8. In his previous life, Tom had become an expert in geology. In that field within the country, he was practically standing at the top of the pyramid. He had both experience and knowledge. So naturally, when faced with the outdated exploration methods from decades ago, he couldn't help but make a few comments. But he did it the wrong way. Right now, he was nothing more than a freshly graduated student with little experience. How could he treat his teachers the same way he used to treat his students in his past life? I'm truly grateful that heaven has given me a second chance. My life has been getting better and better. As for Tom, it seems he's walking toward the ending that always belonged to him. That year, during the new year, my father and I were both very happy. He was happy because life finally had something fresh and hopeful in it, and I was happy because I hadn't wasted the second chance I'd been given. After the new year, there were only a few months left before the college entrance exam. Even when I wanted to rest, my father wouldn't let me go to the snack shop. Instead, he told me to walk around and relax my mind. One day, I passed by the home where I had lived for many years in my previous life. When I looked up, my eyes met those of a woman walking out the door. It was Tom's mother, much younger than I remembered her. At this time, Tom's eldest brother hadn't gotten into trouble yet. Seeing that she looked well, I looked away and continued walking without stopping. The night school didn't teach much, really. When I found that some questions couldn't be answered by the night school teachers but could be explained by Jasmine, I stopped going to school altogether. Maybe it was because I stayed at home most of the time, focused entirely on preparing for the exams. Until the day of the college entrance exam, I never saw Tom again. During those days, with Jasmine's occasional help, my grasp of the material improved steadily. For the 3 days of the exam, I felt somewhat dazed. It wasn't until I finished the last test that I finally felt the reality of having taken the college entrance exam. Back when Jasmine took her own exam, she was very accurate at estimating scores. Although several years had passed, I couldn't find anyone reliable to help. So I turned to her again. A young mind really does work better. I remembered every single answer I had written. After comparing my answers with Jasmine's, twice, almost without pause, she looked at me in disbelief. "Jennifer, you've improved so fast. If you had taken the exam directly back then, you definitely could have gotten into a good university." Looking at the final calculated score on the paper, I felt a surge of excitement too, but at Jasmine's words, I only smiled, because I knew that back then, I couldn't have even achieved half of what I did now. It was unwillingness and the preciousness of the second chance that drove me to give everything to change my fate. Considering my grades and the country's long-term development needs, I chose finance as my major. In my previous life, while taking care of my large family, I discovered my sensitivity to numbers. This time, I deliberately increased my practice with math problems, and found that I truly had a knack for it. Money isn't everything, but the times I'd been forced to swallow my pride because of it made me determined to earn it. I wanted to make big money, to let my father and myself live the kind of good life we'd never even dared to dream of before. After filling out my university applications, I turned my attention back to my father's snack shop. After a few days of observation, I found that the shop already had a number of returning customers, so I started helping my father develop new dishes. One day, while I was cleaning the shop, someone asked if we could still make something to eat. When I looked up and saw the visitor, I froze for a second. It was Tom's mother. Then I smiled and said, "Sorry, all the snacks are sold out for today." The look in her eyes was exactly the same as Tom's when he saw me for the first time in this life. She opened her mouth a few times as if she wanted to say something, but seeing that I was busy, she said nothing in the end and quietly left. What I didn't know was that after that brief encounter, Tom's mother dreamed of me twice, but every time she woke up, she couldn't remember what had happened in those dreams, until she saw me again, when an inexplicable sense of loss washed over her. Chapter 9. I was admitted to my first choice university. When we found out that my school was more than 500 kilometers from home, my father was both happy and worried. After he dropped me off at the campus, seeing how reluctant he was to leave, I pointed toward the undeveloped snack street outside the school gate. "Dad, why don't you come here too? The demand for snacks among college students is much higher than that of our neighbors back home. If you set up a stall here, business would definitely be good." When my father followed me to the city, the small convenience store back in our village was left to an employee he hired to manage it. Nearly a year later, that little shop was doing quite well. Even after paying the monthly wages, my father could still make some extra money. With that successful example in mind, he was tempted again after hearing my suggestion. The convenience store doesn't bring in much, and it's fine to let someone else watch it. But the food at the snack shop, you developed all that yourself. If we hand it over to someone else, won't that affect us? My father's concern wasn't unreasonable, but I had already found the perfect people for the job. Whether in my past life or in this one, Jasmine had helped me far too much. After a year of spending time together, I had come to understand her and her family's personalities very well. Although Jasmine's older sister had a stable job at a food factory, I knew that a wave of layoffs would hit in about a decade. In my previous life, I had heard Jasmine mention that after her sister was laid off, she divorced her husband and struggled terribly to raise her 2 children alone. Although that layoff wave was still years away, it wasn't too early to start preparing for the future. Jasmine's mother was even younger than my father. Their whole family lived cramped together in one small place. Even though both daughters had decent jobs, Life was still tight for them. I had never figured out how to properly repay Jasmine for everything she had done for me. But when I saw the snack street outside the university, the idea came to me. My mother passed away early. My father was my only family. In my previous life, he died before I could truly fulfill my duty as a daughter. This time, I wanted to spend more time with him, for real. My father knew how much Jasmine and her family had helped me with finding a job and applying to college. After hearing my suggestion, he thought for a while and finally made up his mind. All right, I've met Jasmine's parents. They're honest, hardworking people who know how to live properly. I'll go back and talk to them. You should call Jasmine too. See what she thinks first. After I put my father on the train, I called Jasmine's workplace. I got straight to the point and told her my plan. For a long moment, she said nothing. I thought the signal had dropped. And after saying hello several times, I finally heard her slightly choked up voice. Jennifer, I'm just too emotional. Are you really planning to let my parents run your family's snack shop? You don't know, my sister's child was seriously ill not long ago. My brother-in-law's family has never liked girls. So when the child got sick, they didn't lift a finger. My parents spent every cent they had to save her. Honestly, my dad's been doing odd jobs outside these days just to make ends meet. That was one of the reasons I wanted to help Jasmine's family. Her parents were just like my father, never the kind to favor sons over daughters. They cherished every one of their children and would do anything for them, even if it meant living a harder life themselves. I hadn't even brought up the topic of profit sharing yet when Jasmine spoke again. Don't worry, my parents would never leak your snack recipes. They'll just work for your dad and take a regular salary each month. You focus on your studies, our family will make sure the shop runs perfectly. Chapter 10. With Jasmine acting as a trusted intermediary, my father quickly reached an agreement with her parents after returning home. After patiently teaching them all his recipes and techniques, my father handed the snack shop key to Jasmine's mother and said, "Everything here is in your hands now. I'm going to be with my daughter while she studies." By the time Jasmine told me about that line over the phone, my father was already on the train heading to my city. During the time he was away, I had already rented a place for him to live. The cart and all the supplies needed for the stall were also ready and waiting. And just like that, during my very first month at university, Lynn Snacks became the most popular food stall outside campus. I never thought I would see Tom again, but it seemed he had deliberately found out which university I was attending. One day, as I was leaving class to help at the stall, he stopped me at the school gate. At first glance, I almost didn't recognize the man standing before me, the man who had once shared a lifetime with me. Before we married, Tom had been a neat, well-groomed college student. After marriage, he never had to worry about food, clothing, or household chores again. Even in old age, he was always tidy and particular about his appearance, a meticulous old gentleman. But now, his beard was unshaven, dark circles lay beneath his eyes, and his clothes looked unwashed for days, the collar and sleeves stained with dirt. Jen, I was wrong. I finally realized how much of a jerk I was in my past life. Please forgive me. Just give me one more chance. Let's start over and live well together. A few days earlier, Jasmine had called me and told me about Tom's recent situation. A week ago, a woman came to his workplace. The moment they saw each other, Tom's expression changed completely. I don't know what she said, but they started arguing right there in front of the building. Since then, everyone at work's been avoiding him. Normally, the boss wouldn't have made a fuss, but someone reported the incident. The supervisor, who already disliked Tom, took the chance to give him a formal warning. After hearing that, Tom completely lost it. He kept muttering, "Impossible. It's all fake," over and over. And then the higher-ups fired him. From what Jasmine said, I could guess why Autumn had gone looking for Tom. Perhaps she had finally realized that her so-called childhood sweetheart was not a good man after all. Being someone who was skilled at manipulating men, she must have remembered Tom, the one who had once been madly in love with her, and sought him out again. Unfortunately, the version of Tom who had been shattered by her rejection could no longer handle the emotional whiplash she brought. It was clear he had suffered a serious mental breakdown. Even during this short conversation, I could tell something was off about him. Glancing at the people passing by, I quietly shifted a few steps away and said softly, We've both been given a second chance, let's not ruin it again. I already wasted one lifetime on you. And in this one, there's no way I'll ever get tangled up with you again. Tom suddenly let out a painful cry and raised his hand to slap his own face. I'm a bastard. It's all my fault. I didn't know how to cherish you. Jen, what will it take for you to forgive me? His loud voice drew the attention of nearby onlookers. I didn't want him to destroy the life I had rebuilt. And I was trying to think of a way to calm things down when a voice suddenly came from behind me. Who are you? What's your problem? Saying these vague things that ruin my girlfriend's reputation? What are you trying to pull? Sam's sudden appearance, and the words he said, caught me completely off guard. For a moment, I couldn't react. Tom stared at Sam in shock, then slowly turned his gaze back to me. Jennifer, who is he? You're my wife. How can you be entangled with another man? Chapter 11. The semester had just begun, and not many people at school knew me yet, but everyone knew Sam. As the student council president and my direct superior, his presence always drew attention, and now, with him caught in what looked like a romantic dispute, all eyes were on us. As the crowd around us began to grow, I felt both flustered and angry. Instinctively, I wanted Sam to stay out of it. Don't be afraid, Jennifer, he said firmly. I've seen plenty of people like this. With me here, whatever he's planning is pointless. Sam stepped in front of me, his voice steady and confident, calmly refuting Tom's accusations one by one. Seeing how the crowd, which had moments ago been looking at me with suspicion, was now beginning to side with Sam, Tom grew anxious. Jennifer, you say it yourself. Do you or do you not have anything to do with me? In this life, aside from Tom's short visit to my village for fieldwork, we had never had any real contact. No one knew that in a past life, he had been my husband, so I put on a panicked expression and shouted hoarsely. I don't know you. You started saying all this nonsense the moment you saw me. What do you want from me? I'm warning you. If you keep harassing me, I'll call the police. The school security guard, seeing the crowd gathering, came closer just in time to hear the words harassment and police. He immediately turned and ran toward the nearby police station. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived with him. The crowd fell silent at once. Tom stared at me in disbelief. Jennifer, are you serious? I'm a professor, a rural woman like you should have been grateful to marry me. I didn't even have to say anything. His words alone made it clear to everyone that something was wrong with his mind. The police escorted Tom away from the crowd. He kept looking back at me, shouting loudly. Jennifer, tell them to let me go. I'm your husband. You can't do this to me. Sam seized the moment and said clearly. As you all saw, that man is mentally unstable. His words can't be trusted. Please, everyone, don't let this tarnish Jennifer's reputation. Sam's authority in the university carried weight. Immediately, the people around us responded one after another. Don't worry. We all know Jennifer was the victim here. No one's going to spread rumors. Jennifer, don't be scared. I remember that man's face. If he ever shows up again, just shout for help. We'll all stand by you. When the crowd finally dispersed, I turned to Sam, who was the last to leave, and thanked him sincerely. He looked at me and said meaningfully, What did you think of what I said earlier? I froze, remembering his words when he confronted Tom, words that implied we were in a relationship. My face flushed bright red. I know you only said that to help me out. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone. That's not it. Sam interrupted gently. There was a smile in his eyes, but his tone was serious. Jennifer, from the first moment I saw you, I liked you. Will you give me a chance to take care of you? In 2 lifetimes, this was the first time someone had confessed to me so sincerely. I panicked, utterly speechless for several long moments. Seeing my awkwardness, Sam chuckled softly, his expression warm. I'm not forcing you to answer right now. Take all the time you need. I can wait. In my sophomore year, my father rented a small storefront across from the school. With the help of my teachers and Sam, I started a small project of my own, and earned quite a decent sum of money for that time. When Sam confessed to me for the 3rd time, I finally agreed to be with him. Unlike Tom, he respected me. He offered help when I needed it, and strength when I felt tired. As for Tom, one day I overheard the security guard mention him. He said Tom had been taken home by his family and sent to a mental hospital. After graduation, I started a small company with some classmates. Everything was getting better. Everything was just right. Story 2. To retaliate for the fact that I had been married, my boyfriend and his childhood sweetheart registered their marriage. He smiled brightly, his eyes full of happiness. Their wedding date, the very same day I found out I was pregnant. I touched my belly and turned around to head to the hospital. While I was undergoing an abortion, he was praying for the safety of his other child. But later, when he saw my now flat stomach, he lost it and screamed at me like a madman. "Selena, you lunatic! Who gave you the right to kill his child?" Chapter 1. The wedding date was set for April 17th. That day was also the day I found out I was pregnant. In other words, Luis accompanied me to pick up my test results in the morning, and in the afternoon, he went and registered his marriage with Helen. My fingers trembled, nearly dropping the thin booklet in my hand. Over the past 2 years since reuniting with Luis, it felt like we had both moved past the painful memories of our past relationship. But now, it seems I was the only one who truly let go, and the only one who still wanted to love. I wiped away my tears and placed their marriage certificate back where I found it. Yet my heart pounded uncontrollably, each beat sending a jolt through my trembling hands. I pressed my left hand down, trying to steady it, before slamming it repeatedly against the desk. "Stop it!" I said. "Stop. Didn't you hear me?" I screamed hysterically, but tears kept pouring out like an unstoppable flood. My heart hurt, my hands hurt, even my stomach began to ache. I bent over, crying as I placed my hand over my cramping belly. "Baby, be good. Don't make a fuss. Mommy's fine. Mommy will protect you." 3 months pregnant, I had been eagerly anticipating this child's arrival every single day. I remember how happy Luis had been when we received the test results. Overjoyed, he held me tightly in his arms, stumbling over his words. He said he was the happiest man in the world. He had a beautiful wife and a lovely child. I laughed through my tears. How could I have believed him? How could I have believed that he had truly forgotten the past and wanted to start over with me? "Your eyes are red again. Have you been crying?" Luis bent down to change his shoes and walked over to hold me in his arms. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the bitterness in my chest. But at that moment, I caught a faint scent of perfume. It wasn't strong. It was even mixed with the smell of nicotine, but I still noticed it. I was certain I wasn't mistaken. The scent of gardenias, I had smelled it on Helen before. I closed my eyes and pushed Luis away. His brows furrowed, and his tone turned cold. "Selena, what's wrong? Are you upset again? Or is the baby causing trouble?" He sounded helpless, his large hand gently stroking my swollen belly, as if soothing the little one inside. He looked every bit the doting father, his tender expression almost making me doubt if the marriage certificate I saw was even real. "Luis, when are we getting married?" The day I found out I was pregnant, I brought up registering our marriage, worried that taking photos with a big belly later wouldn't look good. But Luis said there was no rush. He suggested we wait until after the baby was born to register and hold the wedding banquet. That way, we could even take family photos with the baby. I thought it was meaningful, so I agreed. In the past 3 months, I hadn't brought up marriage again, but today, when I mentioned it, Luis's gaze flickered with hesitation. He sighed helplessly. "Didn't we agree to wait until after the baby is born? Selena, did you forget? Pregnancy really does mess with your memory, doesn't it?" Luis loosened his tie and stood up. "I'm going to take a shower. Don't overthink it. We'll definitely get married." He walked into the bedroom, leaving his phone on the coffee table. Not long after, notifications started popping up one after another. The contact name read Helen. My breathing grew quieter as I picked up the phone and unlocked it. I scrolled up, reading each message. "Are you home yet? You have no idea, right after you left, the baby wouldn't stop moving. Honey, do you think he's really that intuitive? Maybe he knows his dad isn't sleeping beside him, so he's upset. But don't worry, I'll calm him down. I'll tell him his daddy loves him very much." My fingers trembled as I slowly set the phone back down. Each message was like a thorn stabbing into my heart. Honey? Baby? So, they were the real family. I was just an outsider. Chapter 2. When Luis came out. The droplets of water were still dripping from the strands of his damp hair. I tightened my grip on the cup in my hand. Some things needed to be addressed, and it was time to make them clear. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt dry and parched. Luis. Before I could finish, his phone rang. He frowned, walked to the balcony, and even closed the sliding glass door behind him. Through the glass, I could see his expressions shift, sometimes relaxed, sometimes tense, but the doting smile on his lips never wavered. The corners of my mouth twitched involuntarily as I lowered my gaze, suppressing the emotions swirling in my chest. Not long after, Luis hung up the phone, a faint crease forming between his brows. There's an urgent matter at work. I need to go take care of it. Selena, go to bed. Don't wait up for me. He leaned down to press a kiss on my forehead, his voice soft and tender, dripping with affection. Be good. Get some rest. I watched his tall figure stride out with purpose, and my heart sank heavily. It was almost 10 at night. What kind of work could possibly demand his attention at this hour? And that call, other than Helen. I couldn't think of anyone else it could be. Helen and Luis had grown up together. They were childhood sweethearts, deeply connected. When I first started dating Luis, she had secretly sought me out and told me to stay away from him. Of course, I refused, and we ended up in a heated argument. She left in anger, but Luis simply waved it off, saying she was childish and would come back in a couple of days. Now, just one call from Helen, and he didn't hesitate to lie to me. Suddenly, my stomach twisted in pain. The cramps were so sharp that my limbs turned cold, and beads of sweat formed on my forehead. I called Luis, and the moment he picked up, his impatient tone came through the line. Selena, Luis, my stomach hurts. Can you come back and take me to the hospital? On the other end, I could hear the faint sound of car horns, followed by Luis letting out a mocking laugh. You start having stomach pains as soon as I leave? Selena, you're really something. Even better at stirring up drama than you were 2 years ago. If it hurts that much, just go to the hospital. I'm not a doctor. I can't fix it. My breath caught in my throat, and the next second, the line went dead. I cradled my belly, trying to soothe the baby inside, while enduring the pain and calling 911. Luis had changed compared to how he was in college. All of his tenderness now came with a mask, and that mask I had only managed to peel off a corner after 2 long years. After a series of tests, the doctor informed me that the abdominal pain was due to emotional distress. He glanced to my side, frowning. Did you come here alone? Where's your husband? I pressed my lips together, and the word husband felt like the cruelest mockery. I don't have a husband. For a brief moment, the doctor's expression turned odd. I added, Doctor, can I schedule an abortion? The doctor shook his head, as if used to seeing people like me. He wrote me an order, scheduling the procedure for 3 days later. Take care of yourself over the next 3 days. Avoid stress. Young lady, you need to cherish your body. His earnest advice made my heart ache for a moment. When the elevator doors opened, I walked in with my head down. A surprised voice called out, snapping me out of my thoughts. Selena? Luis pulled me to a corner. Why are you at the hospital? His tone carried a hint of interrogation, as if suspecting I was following him. I took out the doctor's note, and the coldness in his eyes seemed to ease a little. He reached out and gently touched my belly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. What a naughty little one, making mommy so uncomfortable. Just wait until you're out, I'll deal with you. My eyes suddenly felt warm. That fatherly tone made me momentarily believe that he, too, was looking forward to this child. I turned my head away and silently stepped back 2 paces. Luis's hand froze midair, and his gaze darkened. In a soft voice, I said, the doctor said it was fetal movement caused by emotional stress. My stomach still hurts, it keeps cramping. Hearing my explanation, Luis's expression finally softened. He took my hand and led me to a fancy restaurant. You've had a tough time with the pregnancy. It's my fault for being so busy lately and not spending enough time with you. How about I make it up to you today? Chapter 3. Luis didn't explain why he was at the hospital. I didn't ask either. It was as if we had simply bumped into each other by coincidence and then decided to have a meal together. From start to finish, he remained calm and composed, without a hint of guilt. I cut into my steak, but my hand felt weak and unsteady. When I looked up, I met Luis's deep, piercing eyes. Those eyes seemed to hold an eternal frost. The next second, the frost melted, replaced by a faint smile. "Let me help you," he said. "Are you still feeling unwell? Should we go back to the hospital to get checked again?" The sound of the knife scraping against the plate was sharp and grating. I shook my head, and Luis placed the plate in front of me. "Here, try this. I remember you used to love the steak back in college." I put a piece into my mouth, but it didn't taste the same as it used to. Instead, there was a hint of bitterness. Luis's phone suddenly lit up. He glanced at the screen, and for a moment, his gaze softened, but the next second, he set the phone down and put it on silent. "Why aren't you answering?" I asked. Luis raised an eyebrow and replied gently, "I'll take care of it after we finish eating. Nothing else is as important as this." My grip on the knife tightened. How could that call not be important? It was from his wife, the mother of his child. I absent-mindedly picked at my food while Luis seemed to be in high spirits. I could clearly feel that he was in a good mood. Was it because he was enjoying the process of taking revenge on me? Enjoying the fact that I was completely unaware of what was happening? I tilted my head back and drank a glass of water, trying to suppress the bitterness in my heart. "I'm done. Take me home." Once we got back, Luis didn't even step inside the house before leaving again. He said there was something urgent at work, but I knew better. He was heading to the hospital. Earlier, when we passed by the wards, I had seen Helen's name on the screen mounted on the wall. She was hospitalized. I touched my belly. In just 3 days, this life would become nothing more than a pool of blood. I packed my suitcase, thinking I'd wait for Luis to come back and finally have an honest conversation with him. Let him hate me. Let him take his revenge, at the very least. I wanted this relationship to end with clarity, but for 3 days, Luis didn't return. When I called him, he brushed me off with the excuse of being on a business trip. It wasn't until I passed by Helen's ward and saw Luis leaning down with his ear pressed against her belly that I realized none of it mattered anymore. There was no need to expose his lies, no need to ask for reasons. Leaving quietly would be enough. The day I had my procedure, Helen was also wheeled into surgery. From the end of the corridor, I saw Luis pacing back and forth, looking utterly frazzled, every step filled with unease. His hands were clasped together as he prayed for the safety of that child. But on that very same day, his other child was gone, and he didn't even know. I lowered my gaze and left a letter on Helen's bedside table. After that, I grabbed my suitcase and headed to the airport. I think this time, it was truly goodbye between Luis and me. Sitting in the waiting lounge, my stomach still ached. When my phone rang, I weakly pressed the answer button. The moment the call connected, Luis's angry voice came through. "Selena, what the hell do you mean by never see you again? Are you planning to run away again?" I suddenly remembered the words I had left at the end of the letter, "Never see you again." I thought back to the day we graduated from college. Everyone was preparing for their futures. Luis was busy preparing for ours. That day, he was so excited that his voice trembled as he spoke. He said, "Selena, we're going to have a house, adopt a cat, and have 2 kids." He was rambling nonsensically, and as I watched him, I laughed, and as I laughed, I cried. I didn't want to burst that bubble, not even a little, so I spent the entire day indulging in his fantasy. That night, he drank a lot. He got so drunk that even in his sleep, he mumbled about our future. But when he woke up the next day, he couldn't find me anywhere. All he found was a brown envelope on the bedside table. Inside the envelope was a letter. And in that letter, I think I wrote the same words, "Never see you again." Who would have thought that 3 years later, we'd meet again? And even end up together again? I opened my mouth to speak, but the lump in my chest made it hard to get the words out. Luis's heavy breathing echoed through the phone. I knew he was furious, but I didn't know if he was angry because he hadn't gotten to fully enjoy his revenge, or because I had discovered his scheme beforehand. Maybe it was both. "Luis, I said softly, my voice trembling. Honestly, when I saw that marriage certificate, it hurt. It hurt so much I could barely breathe. Then, when I found out Helen was pregnant, it hurt even more. Congratulations, Luis. Your revenge was a success. Now, can you let me go? There was silence for a moment before Luis let out a mocking laugh. So, you already knew. How boring. I was planning to wait until you had the baby before telling you. Selena, you've been married before. Surely you wouldn't be so petty about this, would you? So why are you throwing a tantrum now? Chapter 4. A chill ran down my spine, making my teeth chatter. So this is what it feels like. Luis no longer cared about my pain. I hung up the phone and deleted every way I had to contact him. As the plane took off, it felt like I was reliving that day. The only difference was that this time, I left battered, scarred, and utterly defeated. After exiting the airport, I spotted a figure in the crowd shaking a sign with excitement. Forcing a smile, I walked toward him. Eric, upon seeing me, pulled me into a bear hug. Big sis, you're finally back. I missed you so much. I winced in pain, quickly patting his shoulder. Easy. I just had surgery. Eric's jaw dropped in shock. What surgery? What happened? Sis? It's not serious, right? I shook my head. It's nothing serious. Eric was a chatterbox, talking nonstop during the car ride. Sis, that Luis guy, he didn't come back with you? 2 years ago, when I reunited with Luis, I had excitedly called Eric on a video call to tell him everything. Eric, though clearly exhausted, stayed up to listen to my entire story. Sis, if you both still love each other, then go for it. You've already missed one chance. You can't let it happen again. I nodded eagerly at the time, imagining all sorts of scenarios. What if Luis didn't love me anymore? What if he was single? I'd chase after him. What if he had a girlfriend? I'd bow out gracefully. But before I could make a move, Luis had already signaled that he wanted to reconcile. His words were heartfelt, his eyes brimming with tenderness. I panicked, gave in, and didn't even bother questioning whether it was real or not. And so, we got back together. 2 years, it had all been a lie. The car slowed to a stop, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked out the window at the familiar buildings, feeling a weight in my chest. Unbuckling my seatbelt, I noticed Eric wasn't moving. He reached out and pointed at my eyes. Sis, you're crying again. Instinctively, I touched the corner of my eye. Eric suddenly pulled me into another hug. Sis, did something happen? Did he hurt you? His eyes were filled with pain, his tone laced with anger. I patted his shoulder. No, let's get out of the car. Mom's probably worried. It had been 2 years since I last came home, and stepping inside felt nothing like it had before. My mom took one look at my pale face, her expression filled with heartache. 2 years away, and this is what you've done to yourself? You've suffered so much. I shook my head, trying to muster a reassuring smile for her, but the smile turned out even uglier than crying. Out in the world, I'm an adult, but at home, I'm still my mother's child. I hugged my mom, seeking protection and comfort like I did when I was a child. She gently patted my back. Over and over again, she didn't ask any questions, and I didn't explain why I had stayed away from home for 2 years. My family still believed I had only undergone a minor surgery. After half a month of resting at home, my body slowly began to recover, but the heaviness in my heart remained. Eric, worried that I might be slipping into depression, dragged me out of the house. Sis, you can't stay cooped up at home all day. You're going to drive yourself crazy. I'm the pillar of this family now. If something's bothering you, just tell me. I'll always have your back. Eric has always been perceptive, though I didn't tell him the details. He had already guessed most of it. I forced a faint smile and let him pull me along. He took me to get a fresh haircut and an elegant makeover. Bright eyes and red lips, there wasn't a trace of my previous gloom. Eric took me to an auction. He squeezed my hand lightly and grinned. Sis, whatever catches your eye, just bid on it. Your little brother will buy it for you. I managed a weak smile. All right. I won't hold back then. The auction items were dazzling. My eyes landed on a ring, said to have belonged to a princess from some foreign country. I couldn't wait to claim it as my own. What started at 20 million escalated to 80 million. My excitement grew, and I nervously clenched my fingers. Then, a deep voice suddenly rang out. 100 million. Chapter 5. The crowd erupted in shock. My expression froze, and my mind went blank. That voice, I knew it too well. I had thought I'd never see him again in this lifetime. Who could have guessed we'd meet so soon? My heart skipped a beat as I felt his intense gaze on me. Eric turned to look back and grumbled. Sis, keep going. Ignore him. When I didn't move, Eric raised his paddle. I reached out to tug on his sleeve. Forget it. Let's leave. I pulled Eric to his feet, pretending to stay calm as we walked past Luis. Just as we passed him, a large hand suddenly grabbed my wrist. I felt like I was being haunted, and instinctively yanked it free. The force of my reaction almost made me lose my balance. But Eric quickly steadied me. Luis, that ring is so beautiful. Will you help me put it on later? The sweet, saccharine voice pierced through me like needles, making my skin crawl. Luis's gaze flickered as he replied in a low voice. Sure. I paused for a brief moment before hurrying out of the auction house like I was escaping. Outside, I gulped down the fresh air, trying to suppress the turmoil in my chest. Eric's face was dark, his voice quieter than usual. Sis, was that Luis? I slowed my movements, nodding slowly under Eric's questioning gaze. He let out 2 heavy breaths, clenching his teeth. Damn it, that heartless bastard. I'm going to teach him a lesson. Eric was furious, his stance one of someone ready to tear Luis apart. I quickly grabbed him. Don't cause trouble. I have nothing to do with him anymore. What's broken should stay broken. Luis's actions were no longer my concern. When it's over, it should end cleanly. As Eric and I struggled, a mocking voice suddenly rang out. Selena, you're really something. 5 years ago, you left because of another man. And now, you're leaving again, for another man. Are you really that desperate and shameless? The last words came out through gritted teeth. A sharp pain struck my chest, but I lowered my gaze, suppressing the bitterness within. Luis, you have no right to judge me. Luis let out a cold laugh. No right? Don't forget, you were carrying my child, and you ran to be with another man, and you say I have no right? His words were cutting, each one sharper than the last. His eyes filled with mockery and disdain. Over the 2 years we had reunited, I thought Luis hadn't changed, but now I realized he had changed long ago. The gentle man I once knew was gone, replaced by someone full of hatred. No, he was still gentle, but that gentleness was no longer for me. My heart calmed bit by bit. Before I could respond, Eric seemed to piece everything together. He looked at me in disbelief. Pregnant? The surgery you mentioned, was that? I nodded silently under his shocked gaze. Eric suddenly lost it, lunging at Luis with his fists. You bastard! I'll kill you! One punch after another, each one landing with force. Luis, stunned at first, soon fought back, and the 2 of them grappled violently. You shameless scoundrel! Can't believe you're even more impatient than me. Selena, your taste has really gone downhill. I rushed to pull Eric away. Stop it. Both of you! Eric! But as I reached out, Eric accidentally knocked me to the ground. Pain shot up my spine, making me gasp in pain. Looking up, I spotted Helen cowering in a corner, looking utterly helpless. Her belly was round, and her hands protectively cradled it. On her right middle finger, she was wearing the ring from the auction. I averted my eyes, raising my voice. Eric, I told you to stop. He froze, looking at me in disbelief. Propping myself up, I grabbed him, noticing the bruises forming on his mouth. I let out a heavy sigh. Let's go. I have nothing to do with him anymore. Don't hurt yourself over someone who isn't worth it. Chapter 6. I didn't look at Luis, but I knew his injuries couldn't be much better than Eric's. After all, Eric had been training in boxing since he was a kid, while Luis only knew how to throw clumsy punches. Luis spat out a mouthful of blood and sneered at me. Selena, leaving just like that? Not going to talk about the child? Or is he? Luis gestured toward Eric. Willing to be a stepdad? You, Eric, furious, tried to step forward again, but I quickly held him back and met Luis's gaze coldly. Luis, I forgot to tell you, I've already had the child removed. There's nothing tying us together anymore. Luis froze for a moment, then looked at my now flat stomach in disbelief. When he realized I was telling the truth, his eyes darkened, filled with cold fury. He yelled my name, his voice dripping with anger. Selena, you're out of your damn mind. Who gave you the right to kill him? I stared at his sudden outburst, confused at first. Then it hit me, this was all part of his revenge. The child was just another piece of his plan. He hadn't expected me to uncover the truth before he could reveal it himself. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Luis, your revenge was already a success. Truly, you have no idea how much it hurt when I saw you outside the operating room, praying for your other child while I was losing ours. But at least I'm grateful things didn't spiral beyond control. At least he didn't have to be born into the world with the label of illegitimate. But Luis, you disgust me. You couldn't even spare our child. How much do you hate me? Really? 5 years ago, my family's company ran into financial trouble. My father, desperate to force me into a marriage alliance, didn't hesitate to threaten Luis's future. Back then, Luis was proud and ambitious. If he had known the truth, there's no telling how he would have reacted. So, I left him a letter and walked away. I thought that was the end of us, that we'd never cross paths again. But 3 years later, we met once more. I didn't hide the fact that I'd been married. And he, surprisingly, didn't seem to mind. I hadn't realized his indifference was all an act. Deep down, he hated me for leaving him, hated me for betraying him. Luis stood there like a statue, his lips trembling. Selena, you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have taken him away. His voice was full of sorrow as he took a step toward me. Before he could take another, Helen suddenly clutched her belly and cried out, Luis, my stomach hurts. Is the baby in trouble again? A flash of panic crossed Luis's face as he quickly scooped Helen into his arms, his retreating figure full of chaos and urgency. Eric muttered curses under his breath the entire way back. I smiled indifferently. If I'm not angry, why are you? How can it be the same? Sis, if you'd told me earlier, I would have beaten him so badly he couldn't even crawl. But it's partly my fault. If I'd been older, you wouldn't have been forced into that arranged marriage with Leo. I glanced out the window, and Eric's tone softened. Back then, the company was in dire straits, and marrying into Leo's family was the best solution. Later, the company recovered, and Leo fully took over his family business, finally ending our hollow marriage. By the way, sis, there's a banquet tomorrow. You should come with me. You can't stay home all the time. Dad's gone. And if you keep this up, Mom will only get more worried. I nodded and agreed to attend. It had been 2 years since I'd attended an event like this. Stepping back into such a setting now, I no longer felt the ease I once did. I played the role of a decorative companion by Eric's side, watching him navigate the crowd with practiced confidence. A faint smile crossed my lips. Eric is 6 years younger than me. Back when the company was in crisis, he was still a teenager. When he found out about my arranged marriage, he locked himself in his room and cried all night, refusing to listen to anyone. On the day of my wedding, he held my hand and said solemnly, Sis, when I grow up, it'll be my turn to protect you. Seeing him now, standing on his own 2 feet, I could only imagine the effort it took to get here. Feeling a bit bored, I excused myself to get some air in the garden. I hadn't expected to run into Luis there, dressed in a black suit. His broad shoulders and narrow waist were more striking than in our college days. He had become even more attractive. I glanced at him indifferently and stood to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. Selena, we need to talk. I looked at his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch radiate through me. I don't think we have anything to talk about. Mr. Luis, don't forget, you're a married man. Let go. Chapter 7. Luis's expression shifted, his lips parting slightly as he spoke. Helen's child isn't mine. The garden was so quiet that I could hear every word with clarity. But so what? I smiled faintly. Luis, your explanation is so weak that even if I wanted to believe you, I couldn't. His eyelashes fluttered, And the mocking, calculating demeanor he used to have was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was a trace of bitterness. Selena, you say you were hurt, but have you ever thought about how much it hurt me when you left? You left without a word, leaving only a breakup letter. Do you know how long I searched for you? I went crazy looking for you, everywhere I could think of. I even asked our counselor for your home address. Do you know what I saw when I arrived? You, wearing a wedding dress, getting into a car. Do you know how much that broke me? It wasn't just you who was hurt. You weren't the only one with feelings. Luis and I were like two intersecting lines, strangers at first, then lovers, and finally drifting apart. There was no turning back now. Luis, you've had your revenge. The child is gone. Let the past stay in the past. Go back and live your life with her. Let's not see each other again. This relationship, it wasn't anyone's fault. It was just cruel fate. Suddenly, a firm presence pressed against my back. Luis's arms encircled my waist tightly, and his voice came softly above my head. I thought I could let go of the past, stop entangling myself with you, but I lasted only half a month. Selena, I can't do it. I can't forget you. Helen's child isn't mine, and the marriage certificate, I can take care of it. I won't act out of spite anymore. I'll divorce her immediately. Then, let's be together, all right? His pleas came down on me, word by word, but they no longer stirred my heart like they did 2 years ago. I tried to pry his hands away, but they wouldn't budge. Sighing, I said helplessly, Luis, let go. No, I won't. I won't. His tone carried a trace of panic. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then, suddenly, someone approached us. Miss Selena? Leo appeared, one hand casually in his pocket, the golden frames of his glasses glinting under the lights. His eyes were filled with playful amusement, taking advantage of Luis's momentary distraction. I quickly slipped out of his grasp and hurried toward Leo. Perhaps it was the 3 years of collaboration, but Leo instinctively positioned himself to shield me behind him. Luis's face darkened with displeasure. Selena, who is he? Leo chuckled lightly. Me? I'm Miss Selena's ex-husband, Leo. Luis's face turned even uglier as he ground out the words ex-husband through clenched teeth. Luis reached out his hand. Selena, come here. I shook my head. Luis, I've made myself clear. It doesn't matter if the child Helen is carrying is yours or not. It doesn't matter if you married her out of spite. None of it matters anymore. There's no need for us to continue. Luis opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but Leo cut him off. Sir, I think Selena has said everything that needs to be said. If you keep pestering her, it'll only get worse. Goodbye. I followed Leo to the lounge. Eric was already there, along with a woman I didn't recognize. The woman had a poised and elegant appearance, her white gown emphasizing her gentle and graceful demeanor. She raised her hand slightly. Miss Selena. I paused, momentarily caught off guard. Leo took her hand and rubbed it gently, smiling faintly. Let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Amanda. The realization dawned on me. Leo had always had a white moonlight in his heart. Someone named Amanda. When we entered our arranged marriage, he had told me up front that it was purely a partnership, with no actual romantic involvement. Once he took control of his family's business, we would divorce. Of course, he also promised not to cut off support for my family. Everything he did was to be with Amanda openly and without obstacles. I asked Amanda, did you ever resent him or doubt him? After all, he's been married before. Amanda smiled. Of course. I was upset. He didn't tell me anything and chose to face everything on his own. Wouldn't you be angry? But I'm not upset anymore. I understand now, everything he did was for me, and your marriage was just a partnership. Besides, he knelt outside my door for 3 days. If I stayed mad, I'd only be hurting myself. I smiled knowingly, admiring her grace and understanding. Eric grinned. Leo's the best. He got my sister back so smoothly. If it had been me, I wouldn't have left without a fight. It turned out that Eric had sent Leo to the garden. The banquet hadn't ended yet, but I no longer wanted to stay. Eric frowned. Sis, I still have another dinner to attend. How about I have someone take you home? No need. I'll just call a cab. Go ahead with your plans. As I opened the lounge door, I nearly bumped into a solid figure. Luis stood there, upright like a statue. His expression was strange, making it hard to read his emotions. I spoke calmly. "Step aside. You're blocking my way. Why didn't you tell me?" His low voice came from above. I froze, taking a few seconds to process his words. Back then, I didn't tell him because I was afraid he'd cause a scene. Later, I didn't tell him because he didn't seem to care about my past marriage. So I saw no need to explain. I took a deep breath and stopped Eric from stepping in. "Eric, don't you have a dinner to attend? Go ahead. I'll handle this." He hesitated for a moment. I glanced at Leo, and our 3 years of cooperation allowed us to understand each other without words. After everyone left, it was just Luis and me in the lounge. He closed the door and suddenly pulled me into an embrace. "I'm sorry, Selena. I'm so sorry." His voice carried a hint of a sob, stripped of its usual coldness and composure. "Selena, hate me, blame me, but please, don't leave me. Feelings are the hardest thing to hold anyone accountable for." My fingers trembled slightly as I slowly placed them over Luis's hands. For a moment, his expression lit up with joy, but in the next second, I gently pushed him away. "Sorry, I don't love you anymore." Chapter 8. If I hadn't discovered that marriage certificate, I would have carried that child to term in anticipation. At that time, Luis might have looked down on me with disdain before delivering the final, fatal blow. I would have become the mistress everyone despised. My child would have been scorned as an illegitimate child. If that moment came, I would have had no means to fight back. Luis wouldn't have shown any mercy. It's terrifying. I'm grateful I uncovered the truth in time. Luis's eyes were bloodshot, and he shook his head, his face filled with anguish. "Selena, please give me another chance. I'll take care of everything. I won't let anyone else interfere anymore. We can start over. I'll marry you. I'll make you my wife." Luis spoke passionately, but suddenly, a commotion came from outside the door. "This is the room. Miss Selena is inside. And so is my husband." The door slammed open, and a crowd of people with cameras rushed in. Flashes rained down like a storm. "Miss Selena, some say you knowingly became the other woman. Can you explain this?" "Miss Selena, we've heard you had an abortion. Was the child Mr. Luis's?" Miss Selena. Their constant questions and the blinding lights left me dizzy. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Helen with an insidious smile on her lips, her eyes brimming with fake tears. "Luis and I are legally married, and I'm already 3 months pregnant. Selena is the mistress. She's the other woman." "Who said she's the mistress? Put your cameras down. Can you bear the consequences if something happens?" Luis's tone was icy as he shielded me behind him. A sharp pain flared in my stomach, even though it had been over 2 weeks. The discomfort still came and went. I stepped out from behind him, scanning the crowd with a cold gaze. The reporters' faces resembled gaping jaws, eager to tear me apart. Luis nervously grabbed my hand. "Selena, don't be afraid. I'll handle this. Just stay behind me." "Luis, I'm your wife. How can you protect this woman? Have you forgotten? We're legally married." A mocking smile tugged at my lips as I noticed the cold indifference and impatience in Luis's eyes. They were married. It was a fact that couldn't be changed. "Miss Selena, does your silence mean you're admitting it? Are you really the other woman? And what about your child? Why didn't you keep it? Would you have given birth to an illegitimate child?" I coldly retorted at the reporter, my voice sharp and unwavering. I ignored the expression on Luis's face and spoke coldly. "Luis and I started our relationship 2 years ago. He's the one who married another woman while I was pregnant. So if anything, I've been made into the mistress. And as for her," I pointed at Helen and continued, emphasizing each word, "she should count as a mistress who successfully climbed her way up. After all, she's always been aware of my relationship with Luis." Immediately, all the sharp questions turned toward Helen and Luis, expressionless. I watched Helen's shrieking and Luis's panic before calmly walking out of the chaos. It didn't take long before my name hit the trending searches. When Eric found out, he immediately contacted the company's PR team, scrambling to handle the trending topics. Shortly after, Another headline surged to the top, Helen fainting at the scene and Luis rushing her to the hospital in a panic. Compared to their frantic reactions, I was much calmer. By late that night, I received a call from Luis. His voice sounded exhausted. I've taken care of the trending topics. Selena, I'll make this right for you. Just wait for me. All right. But don't make me wait too long. I replied coolly. I'm not some saint. Helen calling the reporters to drag me into this mess made me the center of attention online. Of course, I wouldn't let her off easily either. So when Eric uncovered details about her relationship with Luis and released them online, I didn't stop him. He even found out Helen had a consistent lover, and the child she was carrying belonged to him. Once these revelations were made public, the focus on me quickly diminished. A few days later, Luis called again. His voice was low, and I could hear noise on his end of the line. Selena, I've explained everything to Helen. We've signed the divorce agreement, and I've resolved the issues online. We can. There's no we. I interrupted him sharply. Just a few hours ago, Helen had called to vent her frustrations at me. She screamed hysterically, Selena, I worked so hard to be with Luis, and now you've ruined everything. If you've already left him, stay far away. Can't you stop interfering in our lives? Luis married you purely to get back at me. I calmly stated the truth, but Helen didn't care in the slightest. So what? I'm willing to be used by him. As long as you don't know anything, he'll always be my husband. Helen, this lunatic, was truly willing to go to any lengths for Luis. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her anymore. My disgust for Luis grew even deeper. The trending topic about Helen being the mistress refused to die down, and Luis didn't seem to care enough to intervene. He stood outside my house for days, but I refused to let him in. Then came a day when the sky opened up in a torrential downpour, and Luis stood stiffly in the rain. I looked out at the darkened skies and closed the window, instructing a servant to bring him an umbrella and a keychain. That keychain was once a token of our love, something Luis had given me. Back then, he was just a broke young man, surviving on a meager 1,200 yuan a month. The keychain had cost 50, but I liked it, and he bought it for me without hesitation. That was the day I thought he was the one. When the door opened, Luis's lifeless eyes suddenly lit up. But the moment he saw the keychain, the light on his face faded into despair once more. She still won't forgive me. I should have known. There's no going back. Hiding behind the curtains, I watched as Luis held the keychain with trembling hands. His desolate figure stumbled step by step into the distance. His silhouette gradually disappeared into the rain. I couldn't tell if it was the mist blurring him or if he had walked into the mist itself. After that, I never saw him again.